Offense was optional in the Windy City, but the Seahawks get the job done and keep their playoff hopes alive on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to be breaking it all down here on our weekly post-game show of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s tuning in here late on this Thursday night. For some of you, it's Friday morning. Happy holidays to each and every one of you as well. All the 12s, thanks for tuning in and making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. The Seahawks improving to 9-7, ensuring that they will have a winning record for the third consecutive season. As for the playoffs, well, that remains to be seen. But at least the Seahawks keep their hopes alive in the NFC West with a 6-3 victory over the Chicago Bears. Yes, that is not a typo. That was the final score. In fact, the last time I can remember a score like this was when the Seahawks lost to the Cleveland Browns back in 2011 when Charlie Whitehurst was playing quarterback. Can't remember a score this low since that point, but the Seahawks come out on top. Their defense just a little bit more dominant, and their offense just a little less inept than what the Chicago Bears was on Thursday Night Football. If you look at how this game played out, Seattle obviously only scoring 6 points, 160 passing yards from Geno Smith. Really, the difference in this game was the run game for the Seahawks, which, again, that's something that you have to kind of do a double check because this team has not been able to run the football effectively this year on a consistent basis at all. But they come out and run for 53 yards on 7 carries from Zach Charbonnet and Kenny McIntosh in the opening drive. They aren't quite able to get in the end zone, and the drive stalls out, but they do get a field goal to go up 3-0. They would later add another field goal at the end of the first half. So there were no points scored in the entire second half by either one of these teams. Very even in time of possession. There were actually more punts in this game than there were points scored by the Seahawks and the Bears. So if you liked defense, this was a game that was certainly for you. Both offenses had some opportunities to make some plays, but not very many opportunities deep in opposing territory for either team. The Seahawks had one red zone opportunity. The Bears didn't get a single one in this game. So points were scarce. Getting into the red zone, that was certainly not something that happened very much. But this game boiled down to a dominant game plan that was orchestrated by Mike Macdonald, and his players executed it. Caleb Williams, the rookie quarterback for the Chicago Bears, is a dynamic runner. He is excellent at extending broken plays, making teams pay with explosives, both as a runner and a passer. And the Seahawks really held him in check for most of the night. He did make a couple fantastic throws on Chicago's final drive as they tried to march down and get a field goal to tie the game. Ended up coming up short. But for the most part, Seattle hounded him. They got 7 sacks on Caleb Williams in this game. They were all over him from the jump. And Macdonald did a really good job of mixing and matching his looks to confuse the rookie. And you're going against an offensive line that was playing backups at both left tackle and left guard. This is already not a good offensive line with their starting lineup. Put in a couple more backups, and they certainly had issues trying to protect Caleb Williams, and he certainly walked into a few of his own sacks as well with his propensity for extending plays. It's kind of one of those live by the sword, die by the sword type things, and the Seahawks were able to get the last laugh most of this game, containing him in the pocket, chasing him down when he did get outside, and they were able to get those 7 sacks, and they get an interception at the end, snapping a long streak for Caleb Williams. But this was just a game where Seattle really set the tone up front. They were running stunts. They were running sim pressures. They mixed in some blitz, including an all-out blitz, sending 9 on the interception that Tariq Woolen had at the end of the game on Caleb Williams. So you saw a Seahawks defense that sent a number of different looks. Mike Macdonald, as Devin Witherspoon likes to say, was really in his bag in this game, and he was getting after the quarterback. The Bears had very little success most of this game running the football. There was a couple plays that sprung for a little bit, but for the most part, DeAndre Swift couldn't get going, and this became a one-dimensional offense where the rookie quarterback was trying to carry him, and that's how the Seahawks were able to hold them to just 3 points in this game. If you're looking from the offensive perspective, obviously this is not the output that you were hoping for against a Bears defense that has really been poor the last 3 or 4 games. Pretty much since Matt Eberflus was fired, this defense has been going downhill. They've been giving up a lot of points. Their run defense was atrocious. The Seahawks, to an extent, took advantage of that. But this was one of those games where Seattle could get past midfield consistently, but Geno Smith was not quite as sharp as we've seen him most of this season, missed some throws. They weren't able to get very many downfield opportunities, and that's a credit to the Chicago Bears. I thought they did a really good job of taking those receivers away, and Geno Smith had to settle for checkdowns, and there was the timely pressures as well. They were able to get some heat on him a few times. You add those things in together, a fumble by Pharaoh Brown as well that happened past midfield, and the Seahawks made enough miscues when they got past the 50, had a few missed opportunities as well. Those stacked up and they added together. And when you have a game like that, you're going to have a lot of punts. You're going to have a lot of drives that fail to really get rolling once you get downfield. And both teams were struggling with that. Sometimes you just have games like this where, for whatever reason, on short rest especially, offenses are always behind the 8 ball in those situations with less time to game plan for opponents, especially non-divisional opponents that you don't play very often. You could sense that today with both teams, that they were struggling to figure things out on the offensive side of the football. So it certainly was an interesting game. The score is 6-3. Not exciting necessarily if you're somebody that loves points, but it was a really good defensive game with some turnovers, some really good pass rushing. The run defense, particularly in the second half for both teams, was pretty good. So this really was one of those true defensive slugfests that ended up turning into a punting contest back and forth between the Seahawks and the Bears. But Seattle was able to eke this thing out 6-3. And from a playoff perspective, the Seahawks needed this game. I know there was a scenario where they could lose tonight and still win the NFC West if the Rams lose to the Cardinals, but at least now the Seahawks have given themselves a fighting chance that if the Rams beat the Cardinals, they're still going to be the long shot to win because of the strength of victory. Tiebreaker, the Rams have a very large advantage on that front. But they now at least have given themselves a fighting chance that if the Rams do beat the Arizona Cardinals on Saturday, that they still have a chance to make Week 18, that rematch with the Rams, be a winner-take-all game. They're going to need a lot of help, a lot more than the Rams do. They need a number of teams that they beat already this year to step up and win games for them to keep that strength of victory within grasp so they have a chance to advance to the postseason. But this is a big win, and of course it gets them to 9 wins. They are guaranteed a winning record in year 1 under Mike McDonald. So there are reasons to be positive, even if the offense was not easy to watch in this game. There was some rain. There was a little bit of wind late, and both teams just had a really hard time moving the football. You'll take a win anytime you can get in the National Football League, and the Seahawks were able to get it done. Now they just have to wait till Saturday, see how that game plays out between the Rams and Cardinals, and they can go from there to figure out whether or not they still have a shot in Week 18 to win the NFC West. Up next, I'm going to get to my weekly game balls on offense, defense, and special teams. Don't go away. You're listening to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by FanDuel. Get ready for the final week of the NFL regular season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can bet on everything from Geno Smith and Matthew Stafford scoring a combined 4 or more touchdowns next week in the season finale, or Jackson Smith and Jigba being the first skill player at SoFi Stadium to record a 30-plus yard reception. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks here from Soldier Field. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks getting the job done on Thursday Night Football. It was not a pretty game, but a win is a win in the National Football League. A 6-3 victory over the Chicago Bears, a feisty defensive effort. Offense kind of was optional for both teams in this football game. A ton of punts, more punts than points scored. Let's get to our game balls. And I just mentioned on the offensive side of the football, both teams trying to find standouts was pretty difficult because you had 9 total points, no touchdowns scored in this game. It was a slog. All the punts, teams had a really difficult time moving the football, but the Seahawks were able to run the ball, particularly in the first half when they got almost 100 rushing yards out of Zach Charbonnet and Kenny McIntosh. Trying to find one player to single out as a player of the game on offense is going to be difficult. But looking at Seattle's offense, player of the game on the offensive side of the football is Kenny McIntosh, 7 carries, 46 rushing yards. Reason that he gets picked as the game ball recipient is because he had the longest run of the day, a 25-yard run, and that came on that opening drive. A really good block by right guard Satoa Lamea on a duo run play. He was teaming up with Abraham Lucas, and the two of them were able to open up a seam. McIntosh exploded through it and gets 25 yards. He finished the game with 46 yards on just 7 carries. So he led the team in yards per carry as well. And you got to see him make some nice blocks and pass protection as well. McIntosh at the end of the season here with Ken Walker III out, he's getting more opportunities to play, something he didn't get to do last year at all. Didn't get a single offensive carry. Spent most of the year on injured reserve with a knee issue. He is taking advantage of his opportunities right now. And in a day where there weren't very many players that shined on offense, Kenny McIntosh was definitely a bright spot for the Seahawks, toting the rock and doing some of the little things on offense that continue to earn him more opportunities. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to play in the season finale against the Rams, whether they're battling for a playoff spot or not. He's going to be trying to vie for some snaps next year in Seattle's backfield. In Ryan Grubb's offense, or if it ends up being somebody else, he is going to be vying for those snaps next week when he's auditioning, getting some snaps for the Seahawks out of the backfield. On the defensive side of the football, this was actually a lot trickier because, again, Seattle only gives up 3 points to the Chicago Bears. They got 7 sacks in this game on Caleb Williams. But there's clearly one player head and shoulders above everyone else. This has been kind of a tough season for Devin Witherspoon from a statistical standpoint. If you've watched the games, you know how well he has played in most of the games for Seattle, and he's still flying around. He's making a lot of tackles, but he didn't have a sack going into this game, still doesn't have an interception, but he was all over the place in the backfield for the Seahawks today, finishing with 6 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and he does get a sack, one that he didn't even know until after the game that he was awarded, and Caleb Williams was running out to his right and voluntarily went out of bounds of the line of scrimmage. They ended up ruling that no gain and a sack for Witherspoon, but he made several spectacular plays today defending the run in the first quarter, maybe the best play that I've seen by a slot corner against the run in years. DeAndre Swift taking a toss sweep. Witherspoon somehow hunts him down in pursuit and brings him down for a 7-yard loss. That's right, a 7-yard loss on a first down run. He had a couple other really nice tackles in the backfield, one of them on DJ Moore on an end around, brought him down, tripped him up for a 3-yard loss, had another one on Swift on a pass play that he brought him down for 1 yard. And there were a couple other plays where he had pressures on Williams blitzing. They were moving him all over the place. This is the one-of-one type playmaker that Devin Witherspoon is, and it was really exciting to get to see him out there making those plays. I also want to give an honorable mention nod here to Jarran Reed, who continues to play really well. He had a sack today, second straight week that he's had a sack. He was really dominant against the run, and there were a couple of plays that teammates made that they can thank Jarran Reed for helping spring them to be able to get to Caleb Williams for sacks. Jarran Reed playing really good football right now. So honorable mention, Devin Witherspoon just put up too good of a stat line not to be the game ball winner here, but Jarran Reed once again playing really good football for the Seahawks up front. You team him up with Leonard Williams, Uchenna Nwosu now healthy. All those pieces up front, that defensive line continues to be the engine that is getting this team running. And then the heartbeat, it is clearly Devin Witherspoon with this team feeding off his energy. his relentless effort, the way that he flies sideline to sideline, and all the different things that he does well on defense. So you've got that defensive line. They are the foundation, and then you got the heartbeat that is Devin Witherspoon and all those guys playing really well for the Seahawks today. And on special teams, look, Michael Dickson, let's give the guy some credit. I think he earned his paycheck for the entire season tonight with all the punts that the Seahawks had. The Bears obviously punted a ton as well. Dickson with 6 punts for 288 yards. He pinned 3 of them inside the 20-yard line, in the rain for a good chunk of this game as well. Maybe not the gaudiest stat line that he's put up, but the Seahawks are going to have to give him some ice, and they're going to have to put that on his feet after this game with all the punts that he had going out there. Certainly earned his money in this one. Maybe that's not something that you want to see happen on game day, but nonetheless, he played a critical part in controlling field position. The Bears were starting deep in their own territory for most of the night, and that made it even trickier for them to get anything going on offense. You can credit Michael Dickson and the punt coverage team for that in a game where they were called upon a lot more than I think the Seahawks would have liked, but they served a valuable factor in this game, getting the win. Okay, let's shift gears now to our weekly stock watch here on Locked On Seahawks. 3 up, 3 down. Which players shined and which ones are going to be looking for a better performance next week in Week 18. Let's start with the players that shined on offense. And I'm going to put the spotlight on tight end Noah Fant, who finished with a team-high 4 catches, nearly 45 receiving yards. This was not a game where Geno Smith was able to air it out very much. There weren't a lot of opportunities to throw downfield. They were getting a lot of their yardage on screens and quick dump-offs. Noah Fant ended up having several plays that he was able to get quick catches, turn up field, either on screens or on quick design routes, and he was able to pick up big yardage after the catch. He is quietly having a strong last 3 or 4 games where he has been able to contribute. When he's been called upon, he's been making things happen with the football in his hands. And it's nice to see that happening, especially in a game like this where you only got 9 combined catches from DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. To have Noah Fant step up and lead the team in catches, he was one of the bright spots for a passing game that didn't have very many of them for the Seahawks on Thursday night. On the defensive side of the ball, what can you say about Leonard Williams at this point? It would be easy to give him a game ball for this game because he did get 2 sacks. One of those, Caleb Williams went down to the ground and he ended up just downing him. But still, he gets 2 sacks. He was extremely active in the run game, had a tackle for loss. And Jared Reed's sack does not happen without Leonard Williams' contributions because he came flying into the backfield and Caleb Williams had to roll out to his left, and then Jared Reed was waiting for him. It was a great team pass rush by Seattle's 2 big men in the middle. Leonard Williams has been an absolute game wrecker, and now he's to 9 sacks on the season. The Seahawks have an opportunity to have multiple defensive players with double-digit sacks this year. Leonard Williams being the closest right now, but they got a couple other players that are on the cusp as well heading into their season finale. He is playing at an all-pro level. He has all season, and if he can do it one more week, I think he's got a really good chance to be at least a second-team all-pro with the numbers and what he has done when he hasn't been making plays, helping his teammates do it. He has just been extremely disruptive snap after snap, and this is just another game that he was able to do it. And staying on the defensive side of the football, my other big winner in this game, Uchenna Nwosu, the path that he has taken to this point, all the games that he has missed with a variety of injuries. He started the year off with the sprained knee that he suffered in the preseason against the Cleveland Browns on that ugly chop block, missed 4 games. He comes back, last 20 snaps against the Giants, and then he injured his thigh. He's out for a huge chunk of the season. He came back 4 weeks ago, and he's really been just trying to shake the rust off up to this point. He has not been overly effective when it comes to generating pressures. It's looked like he's just been trying to get his feet underneath him. The Uchenna Nwosu of 2022 showed up tonight, though, and back-to-back plays in the second half. He gets a sack on Caleb Williams and a pass deflection to the line of scrimmage. He had a pressure on the first pass play of the game for the Chicago Bears, looping back inside on a stunt. This was the best game easily that we have seen from him in more than a calendar year. His first sack in more than a calendar year. Really exciting to see Uchenna Nwosu going out and playing at the level that he is playing at tonight. That is a difference maker. If the Seahawks can somehow get into the playoffs with him rolling on all cylinders, Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, and everybody else that the Seahawks have on that defensive line, that is a group that nobody wants to see in the first round of the playoffs. Again, there's a lot of things that have to happen for Seattle to get into the playoffs to begin with, but if they do, that is the one area you can look at and say that gives them a fighting chance to be able to compete against top teams in the NFC in the postseason with a healthy Uchenna Nwosu joining the rest of the talent that they've got on that defensive line. Flipping gears now to our 3 down here. The players that didn't necessarily have the best of games tonight are going to be looking to bounce back in Week 18. Got to start at the quarterback position. And listen, Geno Smith completed almost 74% of his passes. If you look at the stat line, there weren't any interceptions, no touchdowns though either. 160 yards. Geno Smith has had worse games than this. If you look back at his time as starter, there's been times he's had multiple interceptions. There's been games where he's had a much lower completion percentage. But a lot of this felt inflated because of screens early on. A lot of the yards he had in the first half was coming on screens and quick dump-offs. Wasn't able to get the ball downfield. And there were some missed opportunities. He almost threw a pick on the opening drive in the red zone. It would have been his NFL-leading 6th red zone pick, and the Bears simply dropped it. Tried to squeeze it into Tyler Lockett. It was not there. Don't know what he was looking at on that play. There's nothing he can defend on that as far as judgment. It was a bad decision. He lucked out on the Seahawks. We're lucky they got a field goal off that. But he, on the next drive, had a 3rd down to Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Smith-Njigba was wide open. He airmails it and throws it behind him. One of the most inaccurate throws that I've seen Geno Smith make. He just didn't look comfortable tonight. Was it his knee that he's still dealing with? Was it the short rest? Whatever it was, he did not look overly comfortable, and the stats are a little bit misleading. Again, I've seen him have worse games than this, but Seattle scored 6 points in this game, and a big reason why they weren't able to get in the end zone and they weren't able to put more points on the board, they were having their struggles moving the football through the air, and number 7 was a big part of that today. Next guy on the list here, Pharaoh Brown. I want to go back to the play. This really, to me, was the play that changed the game because the Chicago Bears easily could have won this game, that neither team could move the ball on offense. Bears could have won this game if a critical play late in the 3rd quarter ended up going the Bears' way. Pharaoh Brown catches a quick dump off on 2nd and 9. He's trying to battle for extra yards, and then he coughs up the football. Cornerback Kyler Gordon, formerly of Washington, picks it up and returns it 62 yards for a touchdown. Pretty much everybody else is standing around. They think the play is over with. And initially, the officials said that it was a touchdown. They ruled it as a touchdown and a fumble. After they reviewed it, though, you could see Pharaoh Brown's foot made contact with Kyler Gordon when he was still on the ground, had a knee on the ground, getting the football. So he was ruled down at the Bears' 38-yard line instead of it being a 62-yard touchdown. Nwosu got his sack a few plays later to knock Chicago behind past midfield back on their own territory, and they had to punt. So it ended up being a mistake that ended up netting 0 points. The Bears didn't get anything off of it. Crisis averted. Seattle doesn't have to worry even about a field goal there. But if that would have been a touchdown, obviously it would have been with PAT. It would have been 10-6 at that point. 4 points at this game felt insurmountable with the way the offenses were moving. So that may have been the play that ultimately changed things. And Pharaoh Brown, he can't put the football on the ground there in a game that tight with such a minimal margin for error. The Seahawks were fortunate that they were able to get that call overturned and that they were able to get another defensive stop. And the last player on my list, this is just another one where you look at some plays that were missed opportunities. Dre'Mont Jones finished the game with 1 tackle, and Caleb Williams had 37 rushing yards and averaged almost 8 yards per carry in this game. It ended up not hurting the Seahawks, but there were a couple plays where he was able to get outside of contain in the pocket, where Dre'Mont Jones just did not do his job containing. He was not able to shed. He didn't keep his eyes on the quarterback, and it allowed Caleb Williams to find those escape routes. And the fact that you don't get a quarterback hit, you don't get a sack, you don't get any tackles for loss, just 1 tackle out of him. Again, this is another performance where you're just looking for 55 to make some impact plays. And with the rest of the defensive line doing things, Derek Hall had a sack in this game. With everybody else rising to the occasion, you're just looking for 55 to make some of those impact plays. And they're simply not happening. Obviously, there have been some good games for him as of late, but this was another one that was pretty quiet for number 55, with maybe the most notable plays being the ones that he wasn't able to make, getting off blocks and letting Caleb Williams escape. You're just hoping to see more from Draymond Jones when they play the Rams, and you're hoping you're battling for an NFC West title and you can get one of your highest paid players to play to that level on the defensive side of the football. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to ensure you don't miss a single episode. We'll be coming back with a show tomorrow. We'll have a Blue Friday episode, switching things up a little bit with some Film Friday, diving into some things that we broke down from this game, the win over the Chicago Bears. Make sure you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. Go Hawks.